The shell of a snail is more than just a house on its back. It is a masterwork of biological engineering crafted by nature through millions of years of evolution. Composed primarily of calcium carbonate, the shell acts as a robust shield against the dangers of the wild. From falling debris to the sharp beak of a bird, the shell resists impact and safeguards the soft, vulnerable body curled within. But this shell is not just about hardness. Inside it is lined with a living layer of cells known as the epithelium. This layer plays a crucial role in maintaining the health and integrity of the shell. It continuously secretes material to repair minor damage and even to allow the shell to grow with the snail. Alongside this is the production of a thin layer of mucus which coats the inner surface. This mucus serves as a moisture barrier, preserving precious water within the body and preventing dehydration. In arid environments or under direct sunlight, this feature becomes a lifesaver, allowing the snail to retain its internal fluids and avoid drying out. The spiral structure of the shell also has an evolutionary advantage. Its shape distributes pressure evenly, making it less likely to crack under force. In addition, the compact spiral allows the snail to retract completely into its shell, sealing off its body with a toughened operculum, in some species effectively locking out predators and hostile elements. Thus, what may appear to be a simple shell is in truth a sophisticated survival capsule, a fortress grown by the snail itself. It is both armor and sanctuary, enabling this slow-moving creature to endure in a fast and dangerous world. Beneath the slow glide of a snail lies one of the most remarkable and underappreciated substances in the natural world, its mucus. This slimy trail is not merely a residue but a complex biochemical defense system woven into every aspect of the snail's life. At its core is a protein called mucin, a molecule that gives the mucus its thick, sticky, and elastic properties. As the snail moves, it secretes this mucus from the underside of its muscular foot, creating a slick carpet that allows it to travel over rough, sharp, or even vertical surfaces without injury or interruption. This is not just lubrication, it is a marvel of adhesion and flexibility. Thanks to this mucus, snails can climb glass windows, vertical walls, and even hang upside down without falling. But the functions of this mucus go far beyond movement. It acts as a shield against harmful microbes, containing natural antibacterial and antifungal agents that protect the snail from infections in the soil and on decaying plant matter. It also acts as a barrier to parasites, preventing tiny invaders from penetrating the snail's soft body. In some species, the mucus contains pheromones, allowing snails to communicate to attract mates or mark trails in their environment. When a snail passes over human skin, the sensation it leaves is unmistakable, thick, sticky, and oddly persistent, a physical memory of the biochemical complexity hidden in that shining trail. Some types of snail mucus are even being studied for use in cosmetics and medicine due to their ability to promote skin healing and hydration. In the natural world, where speed is not an option and threats abound, the snail relies on this living armor, its mucus, to navigate, survive, and thrive. It is an invisible but powerful testament to evolution's quiet ingenuity. In the silent corners of gardens and forests, the land snail moves with deliberate care, a creature finely tuned to the rhythms of moisture and air. Unlike aquatic species that draw oxygen from water, land snails have evolved a specialized breathing organ known as a pulmonate lung. This single air chamber functions much like a primitive lung, exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide through a thin membrane within the snail's mantle cavity. Yet what truly sets this organ apart is its ability to adapt to the harsh realities of life on land, where water is scarce and dehydration is a constant threat. To survive such conditions, land snails have developed the remarkable ability to regulate their respiration through a small external opening called a breathing pore. When the air becomes dry or the heat intensifies, the snail closes this pore, sealing its lung from the outside world. This simple yet powerful act dramatically reduces water loss by limiting evaporation from the moist tissues inside. It is a physiological switch, a decision to pause in order to endure. During these times, the snail often becomes motionless, retreating into its shell and entering a state of rest. But when the rains return or the night air brings back the dew, the breathing pore opens again, and the snail awakens to resume its quiet journey. This elegant control of air and moisture is more than a survival trick, it is a delicate dance with the environment, a balance between life and loss. Through this adaptive breath, the land snail has carved out a niche in ecosystems across the globe, from humid jungles to dry hillsides, proving that even the smallest lungs can carry the breath of resilience. Beneath the cloak of darkness, when most of the forest falls into a hush, the snail begins its journey. It is not built for the blaze of day, nor for the heat that saps life from delicate skin. The snail is a creature of moisture and shade, and thus it lives by the rhythm of the night. As a nocturnal organism, the snail's entire behavior has evolved to suit the cooler, quieter hours. Under moonlight or overcast skies, it emerges sliding across damp leaves and moist earth, its body glistening with a thin coat of protective mucus. The reason behind this nightbound life is not mere preference but survival. Daylight brings danger in many forms. The ultraviolet rays of the sun can dry out a snail's soft tissue, rapidly leading to desiccation. Its body lacks the thick skin of mammals or the scales of reptiles. Instead, its survival depends on moisture, on the ability to keep its tissues hydrated and elastic. That is why the snail is so sensitive to humidity. Its internal clock is not governed by light alone but by the moisture in the air. A dry, sunny day keeps it hidden within its shell, often sealed behind a mucus plug to conserve water. But when the rain falls or when the evening mist rolls in, the world becomes friendly again. The surface of leaves glisten, the soil becomes soft and welcoming, and the snail sets out in search of food, mates, or shelter. This behavioral timing is an example of circadian regulation, a form of internal biological rhythm. It helps the snail not only avoid dehydration but also reduce encounters with predators. Birds, lizards, and some mammals that prey on snails are more active during the day. By venturing out at night, the snail reduces the likelihood of being seen, heard, or caught. Its quiet movements and near invisibility in the shadows become a shield, a behavioral camouflage that lets it forage in peace. Yet this behavioral rhythm is tightly linked to another crucial physiological strategy, the control of breathing and water retention. Unlike many animals, snails breathe through a simple lung, a moist cavity located within their mantle. This organ is connected to the outside world by a tiny breathing hole, which can open or close depending on environmental conditions. This hole is called the pneumostome, and it serves as a gateway to both air and risk. When the air is dry or the wind is harsh, the snail closes this opening tightly. By doing so, it traps moisture inside its lung, preventing the evaporation of precious bodily fluids. It is a powerful adaptation for terrestrial life, especially for an animal so dependent on dampness. Some snails can remain sealed in this state for days or even weeks, waiting for better conditions to return. This ability to modulate respiration in response to humidity is not only a form of water conservation but also a demonstration of finely tuned homeostasis. As the snail moves, its slow pace is not a disadvantage but a deliberate calculation. It uses minimal energy, avoids generating excess heat, and ensures that every move is aligned with its core survival principles. Even its paths across leaves or stone are often lined with mucus trails that retain moisture and help it retrace safe routes. In this dance of darkness and breath, the snail becomes more than a simple creature. It becomes a master of biological timing, a symbol of how life adapts not through speed but through sensitivity. Every drop of water, every patch of shade becomes a resource to be read and respected. And in this fragile balance of breath and night, the snail continues its silent, ancient journey, a living whisper in the world's great symphony of survival. In the quiet corners of the natural world, where every drop of energy counts and survival hinges on efficiency, the snail has evolved one of the most extraordinary reproductive strategies known to biology. Unlike most animals that are divided into male and female, the majority of land snails are hermaphrodites. This means that each individual carries within itself both male and female reproductive organs, a dual system designed not for complexity but for remarkable advantage. This condition, known as hermaphroditism, allows a snail to mate with any mature individual of its species, greatly increasing its chances of successful reproduction. In environments where mates are scarce and movement is slow, this adaptation is not just useful, it is essential. When two snails meet, they engage in a delicate and often lengthy courtship ritual. They circle each other, touch with tentacles, and release chemical signals through their mucus to assess compatibility. If conditions are favorable, both snails align their bodies to exchange sperm. Unlike in many species where only one individual becomes pregnant, both snails involved in the mating process may go on to lay eggs. Each will use the sperm received from the other to fertilize its own eggs. This dual exchange doubles the reproductive output of each encounter, maximizing efficiency in a life form that moves so slowly and encounters others so infrequently. This method of reproduction is particularly powerful in isolated or fragmented habitats. A single snail can store sperm from multiple partners and fertilize eggs over a period of time, sometimes weeks or even months after the original mating. Some species are even capable of self-fertilization, although this is less common and generally produces less genetically diverse offspring. The flexibility of this reproductive strategy helps snails colonize new environments, recover from population decline, and maintain genetic variation within the species. The reproductive organs of the snail are tucked safely within its body, coiled around the internal organs near the mantle cavity. A specialized structure called the love dart is used by some species during mating. This sharp calcareous spike is stabbed into the partner prior to sperm exchange, and it is believed to deliver hormones that increase the chances of successful fertilization. Though seemingly violent, this behavior is part of a larger evolutionary strategy to ensure the survival of one's genetic material. After fertilization, the snail seeks out a safe, moist location, often just beneath the soil or under decaying leaves, to lay its eggs. The eggs are encased in a gelatinous material that retains moisture and protects the developing embryos. Within days or weeks, depending on the species and environment, tiny snails emerge fully formed with soft shells that will harden over time. These hatchlings are immediately independent, equipped with the same basic tools for survival as their parents. The power of hermaphroditism in snails is not just in its efficiency but in its adaptability. It allows for population resilience and expansion across diverse habitats, from tropical rainforests to urban gardens. In some species, this reproductive strategy has contributed to their success as invasive organisms capable of spreading rapidly once introduced to a new ecosystem. In the slow, deliberate world of the snail, where each movement is calculated and every resource must be carefully guarded, the ability to mate with any other member of the species represents a profound evolutionary triumph. It ensures that no meeting is wasted, no contact is without potential. The hermaphroditic snail becomes a symbol of nature's ingenuity, a quiet reminder that survival is not always about speed or strength, but about the cleverness of design. Through this dual-gendered body, the snail has turned limitation into opportunity, ensuring its place in the web of life for millions of years. In the delicate world of land snails, where survival depends not on speed, but on timing, nature has gifted them with a powerful biological secret: the ability to pause life itself. This strategy, known as dormancy, allows snails to endure environmental extremes that would otherwise prove fatal. When the air becomes dry and the sun scorches the earth, when moisture vanishes from the soil and heat threatens to dehydrate their soft bodies, snails retreat not in panic, but in preparation. This form of dormancy is called estivation, a physiological state of suspended activity triggered by drought or high temperatures. It is a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering, one that reduces the snail's metabolic rate to a near halt, conserving every drop of water and ounce of energy. To initiate estivation, the snail withdraws into its shell and secretes a thick layer of mucus, which hardens to form a protective barrier known as the epiphragm. This barrier seals the opening of the shell, trapping moisture inside and shielding the snail from desiccation. The snail's heartbeat slows, its breathing ceases through the closed pneumostome, and digestion halts entirely. Inside its shell, the snail enters a deep resting phase where it can survive without food or water for weeks or even months. It waits for the return of favorable conditions, for a single drop of rain or a rise in humidity that signals the world outside is safe again. But the snail's battle for survival does not end with the dry season. When the cold of winter sweeps across the land and temperatures fall below freezing, another type of dormancy begins. This is brumation, the winter counterpart to estivation. In brumation, the snail again withdraws into its shell, this time to conserve heat and protect itself from frost. Though similar in appearance to estivation, the triggers and physiological changes are slightly different. During brumation, body functions are suppressed to an even greater degree. The snail becomes completely unresponsive, conserving its energy reserves throughout the cold months. Some snails burrow into the soil to escape freezing air, while others find shelter beneath fallen leaves or inside tree bark. Their shells offer insulation, and the mucus lining adds an extra layer of thermal protection. In colder climates, brumation can last an entire season, from the first frost to the thaw of spring. Yet when the ground softens and the air warms, the snail awakens, slowly stretching its muscular foot and reactivating its respiratory system. The world is new again, and the cycle of activity resumes. These twin dormancy states are vital not only for individual survival but for species continuity. They allow snails to inhabit regions with harsh climates and unpredictable weather patterns, from arid deserts to temperate forests. Without estivation and brumation, the snail would be limited to the narrow margins of the tropics, where conditions remain stable year-round. Instead, it has become a global resident, quietly thriving in gardens, woodlands, and grasslands across continents. The mechanisms behind these dormancy states are a marvel of biological control. Hormonal signals triggered by environmental stressors regulate the snail's transition into and out of dormancy. Cellular activity is reduced to minimal maintenance levels, preventing tissue damage during extended periods of inactivity. Energy stored in the form of glycogen is carefully rationed, allowing the snail to maintain basic life functions without external input. What may appear to be stillness from the outside is in fact a dynamic state of control and conservation. In this quiet pause, the snail teaches us something profound about resilience. Life does not always charge forward. Sometimes survival depends on knowing when to stop, to retreat, to wait. The snail's ability to enter estivation and brumation is not weakness but wisdom, a physiological meditation in the face of adversity. It is one of nature's oldest and most elegant survival strategies, and it has allowed these gentle creatures to endure through drought, frost, and time itself. In the fragile yet determined world of the land snail, the shell is not just armor, it is life itself. It serves as a shield against predators, a shelter from the sun, and a reservoir of moisture. But like all things exposed to the wear of time and the dangers of the environment, the shell can crack. A fall from a leaf, the peck of a bird, or even the pressure of sharp terrain can cause fractures in this delicate structure. For many creatures, such an injury might mean death, but the snail possesses an extraordinary ability, one that seems almost magical in its quiet efficiency. It can repair its own shell using materials drawn from its environment and its own body. At the core of this regenerative process lies a mineral that is both abundant in nature and vital to life: calcium. Through its diet, the snail ingests calcium from various sources such as soil, decaying leaves, limestone, and even the shells of other snails. Once inside the body, this calcium is transported through the bloodstream and directed toward the mantle, the tissue responsible for shell formation and maintenance. The mantle lies just beneath the shell surface and acts as a living interface between the snail and its protective home. When a crack or hole appears, the mantle immediately detects the damage. Specialized cells within this tissue begin the process of biomineralization, a precise and complex reaction in which calcium ions are precipitated and fused with proteins to form calcium carbonate. This is the very same substance that originally built the shell layer by layer over the snail's early life. The new material is laid down from the inside, gradually sealing the wound from within. In time, the scar fades, replaced by a smooth continuation of the shell's spiral form. This process is slow, sometimes taking days or weeks depending on the size of the break and the availability of calcium. During this time, the snail often reduces its activity, limiting movement and exposure to further injury. It may retreat into a safer location and rely on stored energy reserves. Some snails even create a thicker mucus seal to guard against infection or further moisture loss while the repair is underway. The importance of calcium to this process cannot be overstated. In environments where calcium is scarce, snails suffer from thinner, weaker shells, making them more vulnerable to damage and less capable of repair. This is why many snail species are found in regions rich in limestone or chalky soils. In captive environments such as terrarium, snail keepers often provide sources of calcium like cuttlebone or crushed eggshells to ensure healthy shell growth and healing. But the repair process is not only about structure. The shell must also regain its function as a barrier. The inner lining that protects the snail's body must be reformed. The coloration and patterning of the shell may not always return perfectly, but its strength and integrity often do. This is not simply patchwork, but biological craftsmanship, the mantle weaving mineral and protein into a seamless extension of the self. In some species, even severe shell damage can be overcome with time and resources. Though complete shell regrowth is rare, in adults significant recovery is possible thanks to this remarkable cellular machinery. This ability to regenerate such a complex mineral structure is unique among land invertebrates and offers insight into broader questions of tissue engineering and self-repair in biology. From a broader perspective, the snail's capacity to heal its own shell speaks to a deeper theme in nature. Life is not only about defense against harm, but about recovery from it. The snail does not rely on speed or aggression to survive, but on resilience and adaptation. Its shell is a record of its trials, a spiral journal etched in calcium and scarred with stories of survival. In the stillness of its movement and the silence of its repairs, the snail demonstrates a truth that echoes across ecosystems. That to endure is not only to withstand pressure, but to rebuild from it. With each crack filled and each fracture sealed, the snail carries on a legacy of survival, one layer of calcium at a time. In the subtle and silent world of the snail, where movement is slow and vision is limited, survival depends on something far more ancient than sight: the power to smell and sense the unseen. For the land, snail life is experienced not through speed or sharp eyes, but through a deep and constant dialogue with the chemistry of its surroundings. Its primary tools for this sensory communication are its tentacles, long, flexible appendages that reach into the world like antennae tuned to the whispers of nature. At the tips of these tentacles are specialized cells known as chemoreceptors, microscopic detectors capable of reading the invisible signals that fill the air and cling to every surface. These chemoreceptors are highly sensitive to a wide range of molecules. As the snail glides over soil, leaf, and stone, it is constantly sampling the environment with its tentacles, sweeping the air and the ground in a careful search for chemical cues. The information gathered is not processed with the complexity of a mammalian brain, but through a network of neurons perfectly adapted to interpret these signals. Through this chemical map, the snail can determine where food lies, where danger lurks, and where another snail might be waiting for a mate. Rotting vegetation emits specific compounds that signal decay, a source of food rich in nutrients. The snail can detect these from surprisingly far away for such a small creature, and will slowly alter its path to follow the chemical gradient like a living compass guided by scent. Mushrooms, algae, and soft leaves all release their own unique signatures, which the snail can recognize and distinguish from one another. This allows the snail not just to find food, but to choose food that matches its nutritional needs or digestive ability. But chemoreception is not only about eating. It is also the basis for one of the most important behaviors in the snail's life: reproduction. When a snail is ready to mate, it releases pheromones into its mucus trail, chemical markers that another snail can detect and follow. This trail of scent becomes a silent invitation, a signal that leads one snail to another even in darkness. These pheromones also help snails determine the readiness or compatibility of a potential partner, making mating more efficient and less risky. Equally important is the role of chemoreceptors in danger detection. Some chemicals released by injured plants or the waste of predators act as warning signs. The snail will often respond by halting its movement, retracting into its shell, or changing direction. Even the presence of salt, which can be deadly to a snail, is detected almost instantly through chemical sensors and avoided with precision. This entire chemical sensing system is made even more effective by the moist surface of the tentacles and foot. The mucus produced by the snail helps dissolve and trap airborne and surface-bound molecules, bringing them into contact with the chemoreceptive cells. It is a perfect pairing of form and function, a sensory organ adapted not just for touch but for chemical analysis. Research into snail chemoreception has revealed that their nervous system, though simple, is remarkably efficient at processing complex environmental information. Studies have shown that snails can learn and remember chemical patterns associating certain smells with food or danger. This rudimentary form of memory allows them to adapt to new environments and avoid repeated exposure to harmful substances. In captivity, snails have been observed responding to new scents introduced into their enclosures, turning toward or away from the source depending on its nature. They can even be trained to associate certain odors with feeding times, demonstrating a surprising level of behavioral plasticity for such a humble organism. In the grand tapestry of life, the snail represents a form of intelligence that is often overlooked. It does not rely on loud calls, flashing colors, or dramatic displays. Instead, it listens to the world through the language of molecules, interpreting the chemistry of life with every inch it travels. Its tentacles are its guides, and its chemoreceptors are its windows to an otherwise invisible world. Through this ancient sensory system, the snail not only survives but thrives, moving slowly yet surely, guided by the unseen signals that shape its world. In this realm of chemical communication, every scent is a message, every trail a map, and every molecule a clue in the silent story of survival. In the world of creatures that run, leap, or fly, the snail moves to a different rhythm, one of silence and grace. With no legs and no wings, the snail traverses its world using a method both ancient and remarkably efficient, a form of motion known as foot locomotion. At first glance, it may seem as though the snail simply glides across the surface, but beneath this quiet movement lies a complex system of muscular coordination, chemistry, and evolutionary adaptation. The base of the snail's body is a large muscular organ called the foot, a broad, flat structure that stretches along the length of its underside. Within this foot, powerful muscles contract and relax in a coordinated sequence, creating wave-like patterns that ripple from the back of the snail to the front. These rhythmic waves are known as muscular waves, and they serve as the engine that propels the snail forward. Each wave presses against the surface beneath the snail, pushing the body along one small increment at a time. Though the motion is slow, it is incredibly stable and allows the snail to traverse a wide variety of terrains. But the secret ingredient in this slow journey is mucus. The snail secretes a continuous trail of mucus from glands located in its foot. This mucus serves several purposes. First, it acts as a lubricant, reducing friction between the foot and the ground. This allows the muscular waves to glide more easily and minimizes wear and tear on the snail's delicate tissues. Second, the mucus acts as a protective layer, shielding the snail from sharp objects, rough surfaces, and even harmful chemicals that may be present on the ground. With this slippery shield, the snail can climb over glass, gravel, thorns, and even razor blades without injury. The mucus is also an adhesive in just the right amount. It sticks to the surface just enough to give the snail traction while still allowing it to slide. This balance of adhesion and lubrication is a marvel of biological engineering and gives the snail the ability to move vertically or even upside down. Scientists have studied this mucus for its potential applications in medicine and robotics, exploring how such a substance could be used for surgical glues or crawling robots that mimic snail movement. The speed of the snail's movement varies depending on species and environmental conditions, but most land snails travel at an average pace of a few millimeters per second. While this may seem glacial in human terms, it is perfectly suited to the snail's lifestyle, which revolves around careful navigation, feeding, and moisture conservation rather than speed. In addition to muscular waves and mucus, the snail's movement is guided by sensory feedback from its foot. Nerve endings detect changes in texture, temperature, and chemical composition, allowing the snail to respond in real time to its environment. If it encounters a harmful surface or obstacle, it can slow down, stop, or redirect its path. This sensitivity makes the snail's movement not only slow but intelligent. Interestingly, the mucus trail left behind serves more than a physical purpose. It also functions as a chemical communication system. Snails can detect the mucus trails of other snails, identifying individuals, their reproductive status, or even their species. In this way, movement becomes both a physical journey and a form of social interaction. In some species, the foot can even generate suction, allowing the snail to anchor itself to surfaces in strong winds or water currents. This makes the snail not only mobile but resilient, capable of holding its ground in the face of environmental stress. The biomechanics of foot locomotion are also energy efficient. The snail expends little energy to move, and its slow pace means minimal metabolic demand. This conservation is critical for an animal that often faces limited access to food and water. The mucus itself contains compounds that reduce bacterial growth and maintain hydration, adding yet another layer of efficiency and protection to the snail's movement. In a world obsessed with speed, the snail shows us that motion need not be fast to be effective. Its every step is measured, thoughtful, and adapted to a life of endurance. The muscular waves beneath its body echo the quiet strength of an organism that has mastered its environment not through force but through harmony. Through foot locomotion, the snail becomes a living symbol of patience, resilience, and the art of moving forward no matter how slowly. In the slow and silent world of the land snail, danger can arrive with terrifying speed. A sudden shadow, of vibration in the earth, or the slightest touch from an unknown source can signal the presence of a predator. In such moments, the snail has no time for thought, no luxury of planning or strategy. Instead, it relies on one of the most ancient and effective defense systems in the animal kingdom, an instinctive response that bypasses conscious control and acts in the blink of an eye. This is the world of reflex action, the biology of survival without hesitation. When a snail detects a threat, it reacts instantly. Its two pairs of tentacles, which stretch outward to explore and sense the environment, retract sharply, disappearing into the folds of its soft body. These tentacles are rich in nerve endings and chemical receptors, but they are also highly vulnerable. Their retraction is the first line of defense, a quick way to protect vital sensory equipment from injury. Almost simultaneously, the entire body of the snail begins to contract, pulling itself into the safety of its shell. In this defensive posture, the snail closes its body behind a hardened lip of shell, often sealing the entrance with a layer of thick mucus that hardens into a temporary barrier. This action happens without the snail needing to process the event through a central brain. In fact, snails do not have a true brain as humans understand it. Instead, they possess a distributed nervous system composed of clusters of nerve cells known as ganglia. These ganglia are positioned in key locations throughout the body and are capable of processing sensory input and generating motor responses independently. When a tentacle is touched or the foot encounters a harsh surface, the local ganglia trigger an immediate muscular contraction. This is the essence of a reflex action, a fast automatic response to a specific stimulus that does not require conscious thought. Such reflexes are not unique to snails, but they are especially important for them because of their slow movement and soft, unprotected bodies. Where other animals might flee or fight, the snail must conserve energy and avoid risk by becoming still, hidden and unreachable. Its shell becomes not only a home but a fortress, a portable shelter that it can retreat into in an instant. The evolution of this reflex system is closely tied to the snail's survival in ecosystems filled with predators. Birds, rodents, amphibians, insects, and even other snails can pose a threat. By developing a system that allows for near-instant withdrawal, the snail increases its chances of avoiding injury or death. Some predators rely on surprise or rapid strikes, but the snail's reflexes can reduce their success by making the soft body inaccessible in a fraction of a second. This sensory and motor coordination also allows the snail to distinguish between harmful and harmless stimuli. Through repeated exposure, a snail can learn to ignore non-threatening touches and reserve its reflexes for real danger. This shows a basic form of conditioning, a primitive but effective way of conserving energy and refining responses based on past experience. In addition to physical withdrawal, snails also use chemical cues to detect threats. If another snail nearby is injured, it may release compounds into the air or soil that signal danger. In response, neighboring snails may also retract or stop moving. This communal sensing adds another layer to the snail's defensive behavior, allowing it to respond not just to direct touch, but to environmental signs of danger. The muscular control required for withdrawal is supported by a complex system of circular and longitudinal muscles. These muscles work together to pull the body inward, twist it for protection, and then hold it in place for long periods. During this time, metabolic activity slows and the snail enters a temporary state of rest, conserving energy until the threat has passed. Once the environment is deemed safe, the snail slowly reemerges, its tentacles extending outward once again to probe the air and the surface around it. The body unfurls from the shell with caution, every movement deliberate, every step measured. The reflex that once triggered rapid retreat now yields to careful exploration, a balance between caution and curiosity. In this ancient reflexive dance, the snail reveals the elegance of its design. Without haste or noise, it navigates a world full of danger, armed with a nervous system built not for thinking fast but for reacting fast. It is a lesson in the power of instinct, a living example of how life can thrive through simplicity and precision. In the quiet forest floor or the shaded garden wall, the snail moves with confidence, knowing that if danger comes, it can disappear in a moment into the spiral fortress it carries on its back.